I think the Enneagram is always helpful.
The Enneagram was meant to be a way of getting out of our box.
If the Enneagram gave you 15% more clarity, that is an evolutionary leap forward.
Welcome to Typish, an Enneagram podcast where we explore how your personality shows up in all of life. I'm your host, Tyler Zock, and in each episode, I connect you with leading experts on how your personality impacts your relationships, mental health, spirituality, and everything in between. We are wrapping up our 6-week series called Healthy Relationships today. If you want the bullet point notes for all 6 episodes right now so that you can take this teaching with you forever, you can click on the link below in the show notes and download that PDF as a free gift. We kicked off this series with Suzanne Stabile and also heard from other great teachers like Sarajane, Krista Harden, and Steph Barron Hall. And today, Dani Cooper is going to finish off the series. Dani is the author of The Enneagram for Christian Couples, a guide to understanding your personality types and deepening your relationships. She is a certified Enneagram teacher and coach for individuals, couples, and teams. You can find her and her work at deepwatersenneagram.com or on Instagram at deepwatersenneagram. Today's episode features a portion of a conversation with Dani Cooper that originally aired at my Enneagram Summit on Love and Relationships. In this episode, Dani and I explore what effective communication looks like for all 9 Enneagram types. The insights you're about to hear are not just helpful for romantic relationships, they're truly game changers for friendships, work relationships, and every connection in life. So I know you're going to enjoy this. Let's dive in.
I love that you featured a talk on communication because when you're talking about relationships, I mean, every relationship is built on a foundation of communication. Whether that's good or bad depends on the communicators involved, but it's the foundation for how that relationship's going to go. And if you think about relationships, like one of the most common problems that you hear about or that you experience yourself in your own relationships is communication issues. We all know people who are kind of difficult to communicate with, whether it's they seem really sensitive or they seem like they don't care what we're saying, or like maybe their attention isn't with us when we're trying to talk to them. Or maybe we've gotten into a situation where we've been perceived as communicating really poorly. Like we all have relationships that have kind of gone off the rails because of a communication issue. So learning how to improve that communication is really vital to having good relationships. And if we're honest, having good relationships is what helps us have a really good life. And I mean, you know what I mean, right, Tyler?
It really is the key. Like if you can learn how to listen better and repeat back what people are telling you,
Yeah.
it can resolve a lot of misunderstanding. And that's where the Enneagram is really helpful too, because it can help you to name things that you haven't really thought about before. Like a lot of times when we're arguing, it's just competing values. Like we're both fighting, but we're both fighting for something different. And so if you can name the value that you're fighting for and communicate it and get it out there, then that can help bring a lot more understanding. So I'm excited for the conversation today.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, what you're talking about with the understanding is that we're also increasing connection. And what we all want at the end of the day is to have secure connections and feel like other people are connecting with us. And good communication is one of the best ways to do that. So we want to improve our communication to strengthen those relationships, to strengthen the connection, and improve our lives and us trying to be heard, which is important. But it's also about really understanding the person that we're speaking to and how they're receiving things. So just like with using the Enneagram, when we begin, we want to learn all we can about ourselves and the lens that we have on our lives and how we see everything that happens. So it starts with us, right? We want to know ourselves. But if we only say things the way we'd like to hear them, then we're just talking to ourselves and connection really breaks down. So the second part of this is that we need to understand our hearer or the other person in the relationship. Like you said, it could be a coworker. could be your child. And it's definitely better if we can understand our partners. So just knowing who we're talking to, how they need to be talked to in order to feel safe and engage in the conversation is really, really important. I mean, we all have situations where if you've ever listened to a podcast or watched a TV show or a radio program and you're like, I just don't like how that person is communicating, where you have to just turn it off. And so that's a real breakdown in communication and a real break of connection. So we don't want to be the person that's annoying or unlistenable. So knowing ourselves and knowing who we're talking to is really, really important if we don't want to break that connection. And so we want good communication to connect us. We're all really looking for that.
So do you want to start with your type 1?
All right. So I'll take it away from type 1. So it is not personal, Tyler, when your ones in your life are trying to make sure all your ducks are in a row. It's honestly just them bringing your awareness to little tiny details that you don't actually love anyway. So I know deep down you're grateful for your ones, but ones, if you're doing this to people, make sure that you understand that it can feel this way. So and recognize also how much dualism there is in your speech. So you can come off, I can come off as communicating like something is good and bad, right or wrong. We use the word should a lot of the time, and that can actually make people feel really uncomfortable. Like if they have a way that's more in the gray or that's different than what you're suggesting, that it's wrong. And that's actually not the case. And that's where we need to grow as ones, is to see all that other possibility outside of just those dualities. Yeah. So, but if you're talking to a one, keeping that in mind and hearing those things from them and that it's not personal, they actually do prefer you to be direct with them. So you could say, oh, hey, I feel like you're saying that I'm doing this wrong. So asking that question back, I think, could be really helpful for both of you, because then the one goes, oh, okay, yeah, that's not what I meant. I just wanted to suggest this or that. So, and the flip side is if you have criticism for them, being gentle is really important. You're going to get your best out of a one if you can affirm them and let them know how helpful that they are. Telling them that they've done really well on something or that you appreciate how hard they're working is really important too. So peppering in your conversation with a person and giving them things that build them up is really helpful to communication. So if you can keep those things in mind, anything you need to say to a one is going to be received with so much more grace and understanding.
The ones are hardest on themselves. They don't need another inner critic or an outer critic and an inner critic. So come to them with grace and to be a gracious voice in their life.
We need it so much. Good.
All right. You want to move to type 2?
I do. Okay. So twos love to communicate. I don't think that twos, if you have a two in your life, you know that generally they are very verbal and they use a lot of words to communicate with you. And so if you're a two, you should be aware of that, because you have a lot of words to share every day, and verbal processing really feels good to you and makes you feel connected to the person you're talking to, and it's cathartic for you. But you need to be aware that not everyone is a great candidate for your verbal processing. Again, we want to know our hearer. We want to know our audience, because what can happen is if you are communicating with someone who is not in a space to be able to verbally process with you, you can end up feeling hurt or like they don't want to listen to you or that they don't care, which is, your kryptonite. And so you adjusting your own communication to really understanding if it's a good environment for that is really, really important for twos. So the other thing is twos can be pretty intuitive. So use that intuition to gauge what I just said about knowing if the audience is where you should be verbally processing. But also you can be picking up on how other people are feeling, and you might push them to share that. Not everyone will want to share as deeply as you kind of want to know what's going on. So be aware of those two things if you're a two. Now, if you're talking to a two, have grace for if they are a lot more verbal and using more words than you might use all day long. They really do feel connected to you if you are listening to what they have to say. Remember, they need to feel wanted and needed and loved. So however you can communicate with them in a way that meets those needs, that would actually help them open up to you and maybe even share a need that they have themselves, right? So letting them know how much you love and appreciate them and how much you care for them is going to open doors for moving forward with the two and helping each of you feel really heard and valued in the relationship.
So if you're a 2, to realize that other people might, like, using lots of words to build that connection, intimacy might not be their preferred, primary way of giving and receiving love. Like, you might have a 5 that wants to sit in a coffee shop with you, and that's feels like connection. Doesn't necessarily mean lots of words or lots of talking.
Right.
So that's good. But then also, I like, for the 2s, let's create space for their words. Let's
Mm-hmm.
create space for them to text us multiple times throughout the day, because that's their way of connecting is words and getting in touch with us, and not to get annoyed by that, but to, you said, listen to them, and then that communicates you're wanted. I want you.
Mm-hmm.
Create space for their words.
Right. And even if you're a 2, if you're aware of needing to process something with someone, even just giving them a heads up, like, hey, this thing's going on. Can I vent to you real quick? And it's just testing the space. It might be a smart way to go into that. And somebody might be like, yeah, that's totally fine. Go for it. I'm here to listen. And, just taking that little extra step to understand what you need, to ask the person if they can give it. And then that's going to open up the door for you being able to walk into that situation in a better way.
Great. Very good.
Yeah. Are you
That was
ready?
very helpful.
Are you ready for 3s?
Yep, I am.
Okay, so if you're a 3, so I know you're talking about stances in some of your other sessions, which is so exciting. But some of our more assertive stance people are just busy people. And so their mind is on what's going to happen later today or the things that they still need to do. And I think 3s definitely fall into this category because there's a lot on their plate. There's a lot that they want to get done in a day. So my main advice to a 3 is to be really present with the person you're talking to. That can be really hard if you feel like you have a lot going on, and maybe you're in a conversation with someone that is going to take a long time to get to the point. So if you're tempted to be too efficient or too goal-oriented, it might make other people feel really rushed. So again, communicating on the beginning of the conversation, okay, like, I don't have a lot of time, but I really want to hear what you have to say. So something like that will prime the time for how much can actually be said there. Other people don't care quite as much about efficiency and goal crushing and all of that. And so just making space for that if you can, and communicating it if you actually can't, maybe making a plan to talk later if you can also. The other thing for 3s is people might come at you with how they're feeling. And that might feel uncomfortable for a 3 who wants to deal with that kind of thing later, hopefully, after the work is done, after the to-do list is finished. But people may come to you with some feelings that aren't going to make you really want to dive in and talk longer with them. So be aware of that happening in yourself. And again, it's another place to get curious about, why does that bother me so much? What does that say? And what do I need to look at? So if you're talking to a 3, keep in mind that they are busy people. They have a lot on their mind. And just because they seem like they're preoccupied doesn't necessarily mean that they don't care about what you're saying. It just may feel uncomfortable for them to slow their pace enough to really give you presence. Okay. So you can keep that in mind when you're talking to a 3 by saying, hey, like, do you have about 10 minutes? I need to unpack this with you. Do you have that time for me? And then you give them the opportunity to say yes, or that a later time would be better. So letting them know how long you want to talk to them helps it fit into their schedule. So you can do that to help them feel like they are giving you the attention, they are connecting with you, they are like making you happy and being able to do that with you, but they can also put their focus back on the things that they feel like they need to do that day as well. So just kind of allowing for the 3 to be a 3 and not making it personal that they may seem too busy to hear from you in that moment. What do you think about that?
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah, I love all of it. If you schedule a meeting with a 3 versus like coming and interrupting them in the middle of work, or like date night, or those kind of planned times for communication, oh man, you're going to get so much
Yeah.
more out of a 3. Like you said, can I have 10 minutes of your time? Or hey, can I put a meeting on your calendar for this week? Or hey, can we do date night? Those spaces, you'll get a lot more out of a 3.
You'll get the real 3. You'll get the
So-
real deal. That's what we want. We really do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So type 4s in
4s?
communication. Yeah. So a 3 is very different than a 4. We're in more of a withdrawing stance and when we move into 4 space, and you'll feel that. Where it's not that 4s are completely withdrawn or aren't good communicators or anything like that. Totally not true. Totally the opposite. But 4s are looking for something different than mundane conversations from us. And if you think about the bulk of people's conversation, it's like, oh, the weather is this, and my kid is doing this, and like this was my week, and this thing happened at work. And it's just not super meaty for a 4. So if you're a 4, you know this. I know you know this, but not everyone can go deep with you right away. Some people can't go deep at all. I know you know this too. But the thing is, back to the meaning making. Don't make that mean that they don't like you if they want to stay with light subjects and things feel really mundane. You don't have to chuck that relationship because it's not as beautiful and meaningful as you would like it to be, right? So your work is to chat about those boring things that you don't really care about. They're just part of being human. Just like all of the deep and meaningful and beautiful things, it's just this other side of humanity that can actually be really connective if you do that. Even if it feels boring to you, it feels connective to other people when you can kind of get on that level too. And if they can connect to you on that level, then the likelihood that they'll want to share something more deep over time really increases. So that's my biggest advice for a 4. If you're someone who's talking to a 4, knowing that they will share deeper things with you or can listen to your emotions that maybe you don't have another place even to share that. 4s are really wonderful and beautiful containers for sharing parts of your life that you might not want to share with just anyone. 4s are also long processors. So if you share something with a 4 and it seems like they're kind of quiet, don't take that as that they didn't hear you or that it didn't matter to them. They're probably like thinking about what they'd like to say or how they can make a connection with you about that. They're deep feelers and deep thinkers. So, you can even say like, I noticed you got quiet there. Like, would you mind sharing what you felt about that? Giving a 4 an invitation to share how they feel is a really great invitation. It's something that they're looking for, even if they don't immediately jump at that chance. Just having that door open gives them the idea that you really care about some of the things that are really meaningful to them. And 4s will talk about all sorts of things with you if you're up for it. So again, this back and forth connection, we need to give a little to get what we're wanting for from somebody else. And, this is where connections happen, where we come a little outside of ourselves, we give a little bit, and then the result can be a depth of connection that couldn't be there otherwise if we didn't understand where each of us was coming from.
I I love that tip of asking a 4, hey, what do you feel? What are you thinking? Because they long to kind of have someone pursue them and sort of draw out the things that are the most important to them.
Yeah.
That tip right there will go a long way for 4s. I mean, it hits that need to want to be understood.
Yes.
Yeah, to have somebody pursue them. It just hits all those things
Mhm.
to ask that question. So that's good. All right, type 5s.
Okay, so 5s are another withdrawing stance. And so sometimes you'll feel that from 5s, a real physical sort of setting themselves apart just because they tend to observe and investigate things. They can gather so much information from just being an observer, where some of the rest of us are just busy chatting or getting in the mix of things, we miss things because we're too close to it. So fives offer this ability to get this bird's eye view or to get a really objective perspective on things. But fives need to be aware that that makes them seem really aloof and makes them seem really uninterested sometimes to people if they're just observing, when that's not really the case at all. If you're a five, you're honestly, you could be very engaged, but more at a distance. So as a five, be aware of that. Challenge yourself to move in 10% more, to engage just a tiny bit more if you can. And sharing a bit of yourself is a really great way to build connection. I think fives also get um, people think that they don't want to connect, and that's really not true. They really do want to connect with people. And so sharing a bit about yourself will help us do that with you. And, the energy question is the elephant in the room with the five. If it's feeling overwhelming and getting to be too much, to be too involved in the mix, not that all fives are introverted, but all fives do feel like they have a bit less energy than the rest of us. Communication is key here as well, because if you can communicate like I need a little break, I'll be back, or I need to go home, or like I need to go, that's perfectly okay to communicate. What is not okay is if you like just vaporize and like you're just gone from wherever it is and you didn't communicate that you needed to go. So people, I think, are gracious and understanding if you can just give them the information that they need to know that you needed to go do something for yourself. So don't be afraid to communicate when you need a break, and move in a little bit just as a challenge, and share a little bit more of yourself too. And that will go a long way for connecting you to others. So if you're talking to a five, I would like us to all really realize how much it costs a five to share of themselves, to put themselves in a situation that they know might drain them, and just really have a lot of compassion for how much that feels it drains a five's battery. If we can keep that in our mind, we can also be cognizant of how long we're talking, or if we're pushing them too much, that sort of thing. So keep that in the back of your mind, and be watching for signs that, your five wants to go do something else now. On the other side, if you get a five talking, and if you want them to engage more, asking them questions about things that they're really, really interested in can really bring them out. They can get very, very talkative if you're on a subject that they love to talk about. So those are my tips for five.
I think of the pool illustration again for fives, and you can start with at the shallow end of talking about what they're learning.
Yeah.
Because even if you're not that interested, but that's a starting place to then get to the deep end of the pool with them where their emotions are and where that soft stuff is. That's a great starting place, is to talk about what they're learning.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm. Right on. All right, so let's talk about our spouses, our type sixes.
Okay, so I'm surprised. Sixes are so interesting because they can be so shy. They can be so bold. It just depends on the context. And so sometimes you don't know what you're going to get with a six. But something that's always simmering underneath the surface is this self-doubt that they feel. And we just talked about all the questions that they have and how they impact us and what we think that means when they're questioning us, all of those things. But if you can understand that the questions that they're asking are serving the purpose of helping them feel more safe and secure, helping them, put their fears to sleep a little bit, then I think you can really answer their questions with understanding and with compassion and not annoyance, which I am likely to meet a question like that with annoyance, like, why don't you trust me? Like all of these things that you're asking. So that's the basis of like, when we're talking to a six, so I kind of flip those around, but understanding that the questions that sixes have aren't personal. Even if they feel like they're challenging our ideas or our methods, it's really just their way of gathering info and actually helping us think things through in a way that sixes are super good at. So in a way, it's really good for us to have their questions in our lives because they're helping us miss potholes in our plans, and they're giving themselves this sense of safety too. On the flip side, sixes, you can make it feel really uncertain for people that they're talking to. If they are taking, your questions personally, like you're creating certainty for yourself, but can actually have the opposite effect on the person you're talking to. Like sometimes it makes me doubt myself when all of these questions are coming at me. I can feel interrogated sometimes. So I'm not saying get rid of the questions. I'm saying, what, first of all, understand where the questions are coming from. And sixes, here's my invitation to you. Your questions are serving to get you more information to help you feel safe. But I would like to encourage all sixes to go inward and understand how much information you already have. Often you're asking questions to things you know the answer to. If you're honest, I think that you'll find that that's the case. Your job in life is to keep cultivating that self-trust, to keep trusting yourself, to keep going back to the knowledge and wisdom that's already in you. Because here's the secret. We trust sixes. Like sixes are so trustworthy. Like they are the only ones that don't trust themselves. Everyone around them, or the experiences that I've had with sixes, everyone trusts sixes because we know that they're wise and that they're thoughtful. And so sixes, your job is to join the party and realize that you're as trustworthy as we think you are.
Beautiful. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I think sixes and eights, which we'll get to in particular, need to communicate their values. Otherwise, they're going to be severely misunderstood in their communication.
Yes.
Like my wife is a self-pres six, so she has very warm, comes off very warm, and it's a way of securing those relationships around her
Right.
that will support her and keep her safe.
Mm-hmm.
But for the social six and the sexual six, those subtypes are a little more cool, or you're trying to figure out what they're thinking. And the counterphobic sixes are hot
Yep.
and come off as aggressive. And they might, like my son is a counterphobic six and will use his communication to test
Right.
me. And if he knew what he was doing, was able to communicate, Dad, I'm trying to figure out if I can trust you.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying very like things that test me to find out if I'm trustworthy. Right. Like then all of a sudden my empathy goes way up.
Right. Otherwise he's like pushing you away and you don't want to give him what he wants. Right.
Yes, exactly. It can have an opposite of effect. It can create more disconnection. Yep. with the communication tools of testing.
Yes.
Okay, type
All
sevens.
right, sevens. Okay. So if you're a seven, my biggest advice for sevens is to make sure that you're bringing your hearer along when you're talking to us. So, okay, everybody loves a seven. Sevens are our amazing storytellers. We actually love your stories, sevens. But if you can tell them in sequence, that helps us. My best friend is a seven, and my son, I have a seven son, and they start their stories at the most exciting part or at the part that impacted them. And then a lot of times they back up to give context. And that's really exciting for them, but it's confusing to the rest of us sometimes. If you tell them in sequence, that helps us follow along and really be engaged in your story, which is totally what you want. So a good practice for sevens is to, as you're telling your story or relating something that happened, ask a question of whoever you're talking to make sure that they're along with you, and to remind yourself that, like, I'm not just the one who's telling the story here, but I'm in a two-way conversation. Allow space for your partner to comment. And that also gives you a break to, like, slowing your roll, remembering that, you want the other person to feel a part of the conversation. Ultimately, sevens just want to entertain and be heard just like the rest of us. So if they can remember to tune into their hearer, then you can get the full effect that you really want to get. And if you're talking to a seven, you're going to be regaled with stories. But they can be off to the races without a writer sometimes. So if you need clarification, talk to your seven and be like, okay, wait, hold up. Like, how did you get to this thing? And tell me more about that. This is going to do two things. It's going to catch you up. It's going to help you understand what's happening. And more than anything, a 7 wants you to be engaged in their story. So asking them a question, even if it might be a little annoying for them, it ultimately should communicate that whoever's listening to them and whoever they're talking to really wants to hear from them, really wants to hear the story. The other thing I would say is your 7s need you to react, right? So they want you to show enthusiasm for what they're saying. They want you to be like, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible," or "What?" Anything like that is going to really encourage the 7 and make them feel like you're into their story. So they want you to be into their story because it makes them feel really, really valued. So if each person in this conversation can do those things, then you're going to get some great stories, you're going to be entertained, and you're going to feel really connected in your conversation.
I don't know if I got this myself or I learned it from somebody else, but I think of 7s as being like next to a vending machine. And whenever anybody says something, like
Anything.
they have these 7s brains are always firing. And so when you say one word in their heads, they think A4. And then they go to the vending machine and they hit A4 and then a story pops out like, oh, I have a story for that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Or you may say 3 more words. Oh, B5. I got a story for that. And they can't help themselves because their brains are firing on all cylinders. They got all kinds of things to say. So just to realize, just to, slow down and try to talk 50% of the time will be really helpful.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Because it's so true. They have the fastest processors. And so it's just a moment they can pull up something that's like, oh yeah, I can talk about that with you. And that feels so connective to a 7. And honestly, it is, but just watch your audience, know your hearer, make sure they're coming along with you. If you lose them, then both of us feel kind of weird about the whole thing. So yeah, just be aware.
That's great. Okay, let's move to 8s.
Okay. All right. You promised we'd get to 8s. And whenever I talk about 8s and communication, I know 8s get tired of hearing this, but being mindful of your intensity, it's the thing that you've got to pay attention to. Now, if you really want what you're saying to come through, and 8s do, when we think about 8s, we got passion, we got intensity, you got so much realness happening when you're an 8 that these are messages and ideas and opinions and just passions that need to come through and can really impact the world. So if you have something that important to share, you have got to be extra careful to communicate it in a way that you will be heard and that your hearer will be receptive to. So I'm not saying tone it down. I'm not saying don't be so direct. Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying be wise. You have a gift and you need to use it with so much wisdom and so much gentle application because it's such a powerful message and a powerful bearing that you bring. All right. So know your audience. Watch your intensity. Your intensity can feel like anger to us. So talk about taking things personally. Why are you mad at me right now? And the 8's like, I'm not mad. You haven't even seen mad, but I'm not mad at you. I'm just trying to get across to you something that I care really deeply about. So keep that in mind. I think 8s know this. And I think that they also get kind of ticked about this. Why can't people just be stronger? Well, it's just the fact of we're all different. You're an 8 for a reason and I'm not. And so if you want to communicate well with me, you're going to keep both of those things in mind. You're going to use your powers with a lot of wisdom. So okay, if you're talking to an 8, you may be resonating with what I'm saying about how intense that feels. So keep in mind, it's not personal. They're not mad in the way that you and I get mad. This mad feeling, this anger that you're experiencing is really just the sense of aliveness that they feel when they're communicating about something that they're really passionate about. But here's the thing. If you want an 8 to hear you back, you're going to need to meet that energy and give them some reactions too. they want to feel met in a relationship. So if they're really worked up about something, it can help for you to meet that energy and be like, yeah, like, oh, that drives me crazy too. Or, oh, right, I really feel that when you say that. And now something to help the eight, if you're in conversation with them, I like to try and get underneath what feels like anger too by saying something like, wow, it sounds like you really feel deeply about that. Sounds like you really care about that subject. That helps them practice being in touch with some of their softer feelings too, because eights are real big feelers. Sometimes my eights get mad at me for telling all their secrets, that they're just soft and gooey on the inside. And but
Yes.
it's really true. And eights, like, we love your power. We love your intensity, especially if it's not directed at us and it's towards something really meaningful. But like, we love your soft side too. And it's honestly the purest and most powerful side of you. So if you can do these things in your relationships, if you're an eight or if you're talking to an eight, I mean, just think of the power that you can channel in really amazing and impactful ways.
Yes, I agree with all of that. I started co-leading with a social eight who grew up in the black church, and every eight, wants to go and preach in a black church because when you say something, like people stand up, people clap,
Yeah.
people like say something, and there's like that's actually being human. Like that's actually more like a conversation. You say something and then people
Yeah.
respond. It's kind of awkward to you know talk and then for nobody to say anything, or
Right.
it's like have no
Yeah.
energy. Like that's awkward. That's kind of awkward. And so I learned that, and just how beautiful that is.
Mhm.
And so now I, respond with like energy because it's just fun to be human that
Mm.
way. And so that's what we can do for our eights is when they say something, be like, like say something. Yes. Like keep talking. Uh, we can do that for our eights. But on the eighth side, like you mentioned, if they can get vulnerable more, then it'll actually increase
Mhm.
connection. It'll cause other people to lean in to
Right.
them.
Yeah, yeah. It's always fun to talk about eights, but I think they are like on that emotional edge because it's turned up so high. It can flip to, a vulnerable, tender side so easily because they can access the depths of the other side, the anger and the strong emotions. So yeah, the world needs eights for sure, and they need both of those sides so much. So
Yes, yes.
okay.
Okay, nines. We haven't forgot
No, no,
about you.
no. And I am always so happy that eights and nines are next to each other on the Enneagram. And
Hmm.
it's kind of like, when you're a parent of young kids, you want your kids sitting next to somebody that's going to bring stuff out of them that's good and not the bad kid that is going to make your kid act a fool. I think that eights and nines are seated next to each other on the Enneagram because they have so much in common, yes, in common, and so much to you know, meld and learn from each other. So nines, are, easy to talk to. If you're talking to a nine, they'll let you talk all day. So if you're somebody who wants to, take over the conversation, have it be all about you, a nine's probably going to let you do that. So I'm not saying do that. Please don't do that. Um, but nines make it seem so easy to just, talk and talk, and they don't really have any opinions. And they just are there to listen or whatever because they're so easygoing. This is not the case, right? They are actually not easygoing on the inside as they seem on the outside, and they have a ton of opinions. So if you're talking to a nine, don't just talk about yourself. Notice if that's happening. They'll let you. Notice if that's happening and throw the conversation back to them. It's helpful if you ask them questions and let them know that you really want to hear their thoughts, with the caveat of they don't always have an answer ready to give you about what you're asking. And so allow space for that too. They may say that they don't really know about something. I think that they really do. They may have to think about it a little bit. But remember, it feels uncomfortable to share opinions if it could create a break in connection for a nine. They really want connection. They're one of the ones that suffer from feeling a lack of connection most on the Enneagram, and so communication is part of that. So that them letting you do most of the talking is a way for them to help them feel like you're connecting with them, right? So, but we do want to hear from you, nines. We want to know your thoughts on things, and we want to make space for that. So if you're talking to a nine, make sure that you are allowing for that. Watch for nines agreeing with you about everything. Sometimes they do that to maintain
Yeah.
connections. They'll be nodding, and you'll think.
Don't assume they agree with
Exactly.
you. Like that's
Yeah, and so you'll be like, "Yeah, you said you were gonna do this thing," and the nine's like, "Wait, what?" Like, I was just being personable. So if there is something like that, you following up with the nine is always a good idea. And like even just in a situation where you have a conversation, if you feel like there's still a question or you want to make sure of something, follow up with the nine and be like, "Yeah, remember we were talking about this thing. I wondered if you had any more thoughts on the subject. I'd love to hear that." They are longer processors. They're going to come up with a lot of amazing things if you just give them time and space to do that. So if you're a nine, we want to hear from you. People really want to know what's going on in you. We know you'll let us talk all day, but to get the connection you really want, you have to share some of your thoughts and opinions. This is why I'm glad 8 and 9 sit next to each other on the Enneagram table, because you could use some of that juice from the 8 where it's like, here's what I think, here's what I feel, and it's okay for me to express that. So I challenged the 5 to get a little closer in. I'm challenging the 9 too to practice saying 10% more in your next conversation, or maybe even think about answers to questions that you might get asked in a situation beforehand so that you have some things ready. And don't be afraid to ask for time. Say like, "Yeah, gosh, that's a great question. I would love to think about that and get back to you on it." All right. That's a really brave and bold move. And people want to know your thoughts. They truly do. If you believe that, you can ask that question, get the time you need, and then have your answer ready. You have a lot to say, nines, and we really do need you to say it.
That's good. And I think I learned one of those tips from you early on that was really helpful that I continue to communicate to nines, and that is to think about what you're going to say beforehand. So like in a business setting or even like an important marriage
Right.
conversation, to think about what you're going to say beforehand. Like, what do I want? Like, why am I angry?
Mm,
And just think about those things, and then write those things on a moleskin or piece of paper or your notes on your phone. And then when you come to that important conversation, or you come into the boardroom or your meeting room in the workplace, then all of a sudden you have your bullet points ready. You can fire those
yes.
things off. You don't have to kind of wait for other people to talk first, and you're still processing in real time, and you don't get around to sharing. Like taking that time
Oh, yeah.
beforehand.
Into the meeting with like, and be the first one who says something, right? Like, that's a serious way to boss up. And I would even piggyback on that and say, practice by just knowing where you want to go to dinner. Like, that's the classic nines don't know where they want to go to dinner or whatever. But like, practice having an answer for something really simple, so that you can warm up that muscle of like being able to have that strong opinion right in the moment.
Well, we made it around
Yeah.
all 9 types. This was a really fun and valuable conversation.
Well, I'm really grateful to be here. I'm really thankful to have a platform like this that people, again, can access for free to watch live. And I think that's really important because the Enneagram is for everyone. The Enneagram has something to teach us all, as far as who we are, who we truly are. And it has so much to teach us about who we are in relationship with and who we're doing life with. And I just hope that this is something that helps us all develop more compassion for ourselves and for the other people in our life, because our world needs love, compassion, and better relationships all across the board. So thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
If you benefited from this episode, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating and write a review so this content will be shared with more Enneagram enthusiasts like yourself. Before you go, let me ask you to reflect on this. As you listened to Dani today, which tip resonated most with you? And what's one small step you can do to make your communication more effective today? Remember, Most problems in our relationships stem from miscommunication. So take what you learned today and see what becomes possible when clarity replaces assumptions.